The grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace had never felt so heavy with anticipation. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floors as members of the royal family, senior courtiers, and distinguished guests gathered for what many believed would be just another formal dinner. The air buzzed with quiet conversations, the gentle clink of champagne glasses, and the rustle of expensive fabrics. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy, something momentous was stirring. Catherine Middleton stood near the ornate fireplace, her emerald dress catching the warm glow of the flames. She had grown accustomed to these royal gatherings over the years, but tonight felt different. There was an electricity in the air that she couldn't quite place. Her husband, William, was across the room, engaged in conversation with several Commonwealth dignitaries, but she noticed how his eyes occasionally found hers, offering reassuring smiles. King Charles III moved through the crowd with practiced grace, his movements measured and deliberate as always. At 75, he carried himself with the dignity that came from decades of preparation for this role. His deep-set eyes, so often described as thoughtful and sometimes melancholy, seemed particularly focused tonight. Those who knew him well could sense the weight of an important decision pressing upon his shoulders. The evening had begun like countless others. Guests arrived in their finest attire, exchanging pleasantries about the weather, recent charitable endeavors, and upcoming state visits. The Queen Consort Camilla glided through conversations with her characteristic warmth, putting nervous guests at ease with her genuine laughter and self-deprecating humor. Yet even she seemed to steal glances toward her husband, as if anticipating something significant. Lady Margaret Worthington, a longtime family friend and keen observer of royal dynamics, noticed the subtle tension that seemed to permeate the gathering. She had attended dozens of such events over the past 4 decades and prided herself on reading the unspoken currents that flowed through royal circles. Tonight, those currents felt particularly strong. The dinner bell had not yet sounded, but already the carefully orchestrated social dance was in full swing. Lord Pemberton discussed agricultural policies with the Earl of Wessex, while their wives compared notes on upcoming charity galas. Young couples from prominent families made polite conversation about art exhibitions and polo matches. Through it all, King Charles continued his circuit of the room, but those paying close attention noticed that his path seemed to be drawing him inexorably toward where Catherine stood. William had been pulled into a discussion about environmental conservation initiatives, his passion for the subject evident in his animated gestures. He spoke eloquently about rewilding projects and sustainable agriculture, but those familiar with royal protocol noticed how he kept one eye on the larger room, particularly on the space where his father and wife moved through separate conversations. The palace staff, trained to anticipate every need and read every subtle signal, sensed the unusual energy in the room. Footmen adjusted place settings with extra precision, while ladies-in-waiting ensured that every detail was perfect. The head butler, Thompson, a man who had served the royal family for 30 years, found himself checking his pocket watch more frequently than usual, though dinner was still 20 minutes away. Catherine's conversation with the Duchess of Marlborough about children's literacy programs was interrupted when she noticed King Charles approaching. The Duchess, sensing the shift in atmosphere, gracefully excused herself with a knowing smile. For a moment, Catherine found herself alone, watching as her father-in-law made his way toward her with purposeful strides. The background chatter of the room seemed to fade as Charles drew near. His expression was serious, but not unkind, bearing the weight of royal responsibility that had defined his entire life. Catherine had seen this look before during private family discussions about the future of the monarchy, but never in such a public setting. Their eyes met across the remaining distance, and in that moment, Catherine felt a flutter of uncertainty. She had learned to read the subtle language of royal communication over her years in the family, but tonight felt charged with possibility and perhaps change. King Charles paused before reaching her, his gaze sweeping across the assembled guests. The room continued its gentle buzz of conversation, but he seemed to be weighing something profound. His hands, clasped behind his back in characteristic fashion, betrayed the slightest tension. The fireplace crackled softly beside them as Charles finally closed the remaining distance. Catherine offered a respectful curtsy, as protocol demanded, but there was warmth in her eyes that spoke of genuine family affection built over years of shared experiences and mutual respect. Other guests began to take notice of the interaction, though they maintained their conversations while stealing glances. The Countess of Ashford whispered something to her companion about how lovely Catherine looked, while Lord Davidson noted to his wife how serious the king appeared. What happened next will be discussed in royal circles for years to come. King Charles, with the weight of centuries of tradition behind him, looked directly into Catherine's eyes and spoke words that would shift the very foundation of royal hierarchy. The choice he was about to make had been weighing on his mind for months. He had consulted with his most trusted advisors, spent countless hours in private contemplation, and carefully considered the implications for the crown, the family, and the nation. But in that moment, standing before his daughter-in-law in a room full of witnesses, he knew that the time for deliberation had passed. Catherine, sensing the gravity of the moment, maintained her composure while her heart rate quickened slightly. She had no idea what was coming, but her years of royal training had taught her to remain poised in unexpected situations. The soft rustle of her dress and the gentle sound of her breathing seemed amplified in the sudden intensity of the moment. The king's voice, when he finally spoke, carried clearly across the immediate vicinity despite its measured tone. His words were carefully chosen, each one carrying the weight of royal protocol and personal conviction. The decision he was about to announce would ripple through the monarchy and capture the imagination of people around the world. William, noticing the shift in the room's energy, began to extract himself from his conversation about conservation. His instincts, honed by years of royal duty, told him that something significant was unfolding near the fireplace where his wife and father stood facing each other. The gathered guests, while maintaining the facade of their own conversations, began to lean slightly toward the center of the room where an important moment was clearly developing. The practiced art of appearing disinterested while actually paying close attention had been perfected by generations of courtiers and social elites. As King Charles prepared to speak the words that would define this evening and perhaps change the trajectory of the royal family, the very air in the ballroom seemed to hold its breath. The crystal chandeliers continued their gentle dance of light and shadow, but even they seemed to pause in anticipation of what was about to unfold. The moment stretched, pregnant with possibility, as everyone present sensed they were about to witness something extraordinary. Catherine stood with quiet dignity, her training keeping her outwardly calm while her mind raced with possibilities. The king's expression remained serious but kind, the weight of his decision evident in every line of his face. In royal circles, such moments were rare and treasured. The informal nature of the setting made it all the more remarkable. This wasn't a formal ceremony or state occasion, but rather an intimate family gathering that was about to become something much more significant. The fire behind Catherine cast a warm glow that seemed to highlight the importance of the moment. The king's pause before speaking suggested the gravity of what he was about to say. In just a few seconds, words would be spoken that would echo through royal history and mark this evening as a turning point for the monarchy. The assembled guests, without realizing it, had collectively held their breath. Even the staff, trained to blend into the background, found their attention drawn to the scene unfolding before them. Time seemed suspended in that elegant ballroom as King Charles prepared to make the announcement that would define not just this evening, but the future direction of the royal family. What followed would be remembered as one of the most significant, spontaneous moments in modern royal history, a decision made not in the formal chambers of state, but in the warmth of a family gathering, witnessed by those closest to the crown and forever changing the dynamics of the British monarchy. The silence that was about to sweep the room would be complete and profound, marking the moment when King Charles made a choice that surprised everyone present and demonstrated the evolution of a monarchy adapting to modern times while honoring its deepest traditions. The words that left King Charles's lips seemed to hang in the air like a delicate crystal ornament, beautiful yet fragile, capable of shattering the careful balance that had defined generations. He had spoken quietly, but with such clarity and conviction that those nearest to him heard every syllable with startling precision. "Catherine," he had said, his voice carrying both the authority of the crown and the warmth of a father figure, "I believe the time has come for you to take on a role that reflects not just your position in our family, but your extraordinary dedication to the people of this realm." The immediate silence that followed was unlike anything Catherine had experienced in her years as a member of the royal family. It wasn't the comfortable quiet that sometimes fell over royal gatherings during moments of reflection or prayer. This silence had weight and substance, filled with the collective intake of breath from every person within earshot. William had frozen mid-sentence in his conversation about rewilding initiatives, his environmental passion momentarily forgotten as he processed what he had just heard his father say. His face reflected a mixture of surprise, pride, and something deeper, perhaps the recognition that his wife was about to receive an honor that would fundamentally alter their family's future. Lady Margaret Worthington, who prided herself on never being caught off guard by royal developments, found herself clutching her champagne glass tightly enough to leave fingerprints on the crystal. Her decades of experience attending royal functions had taught her to expect the unexpected, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The king continued, his voice maintaining its measured pace but growing warmer as he spoke. "Your work with children's mental health, your advocacy for early childhood development, and your natural ability to connect with people from all walks of life have not gone unnoticed. More importantly, your genuine care for the welfare of our people reflects the very best of what the crown should represent." Catherine felt her heart racing despite her outward composure. Royal training had taught her to remain still and attentive during unexpected moments, but nothing could have prepared her for words like these. The fireplace behind her continued to crackle softly, providing a comforting warmth that contrasted with the electricity filling the air around them. The Queen Consort Camilla had moved closer during the king's speech, her expression revealing a mixture of admiration and maternal pride. She had watched Catherine grow into her royal role over the years, witnessing firsthand the younger woman's dedication and natural grace. The smile playing at the corners of her mouth suggested that this moment, while surprising to most, was not entirely unexpected to those closest to the king. Lord Pemberton, who had been discussing agricultural subsidies with the Earl of Wessex just moments before, found himself straining to hear while maintaining the pretense of his original conversation. The Earl, equally intrigued, had abandoned all pretense and was openly listening with the rest of the gathering. Therefore, King Charles continued, his voice gaining strength and formality. "It is my intention to formally recognize your contributions by conferring upon you a new title and responsibilities that better reflect your true value to the crown and to our nation." The silence that greeted these words was so complete that the soft ticking of the ornate grandfather clock in the corner became audible. Even the palace staff, trained to blend invisibly into the background, found themselves pausing in their duties to witness this unprecedented moment. Catherine's training kicked in as she maintained perfect posture and appropriate eye contact, but internally she was processing the magnitude of what was happening. Royal titles were not given lightly or spontaneously. They carried weight, responsibility, and symbolism that extended far beyond personal honor. The fact that the king was making such an announcement in this intimate setting, rather than through formal channels, made it all the more extraordinary. William had quietly moved closer to his wife, his presence offering silent support as this remarkable scene unfolded. His expression revealed deep pride mixed with amazement at his father's unexpected decision. The future king understood better than anyone the significance of what was happening and the careful consideration that must have preceded this moment. The Duchess of Marlborough, who had been engaged in conversation with Catherine just minutes earlier about literacy programs, felt a flutter of excitement, realizing she had been speaking with someone who was about to receive unprecedented royal recognition. Her earlier observations about Catherine's passion for children's welfare now seemed prophetic. King Charles paused, allowing his words to settle over the gathering like morning mist over the palace gardens. His eyes never left Catherine's face as he prepared to deliver the specific details of his decision. The weight of royal history seemed to press down on the moment, as if generations of monarchs were watching and approving of this evolution in royal tradition. "I am creating for you the title of Royal Patron of Children's Futures," the king announced, his voice ringing with official authority. "This position will allow you to champion initiatives that strengthen our youngest citizens' prospects for health, education, and emotional well-being across the Commonwealth." The collective gasp that escaped from several guests was quickly stifled, but the impact of the king's words rippled through the room like stones thrown into still water. Royal patronages were significant honors, but the creation of an entirely new title specifically for Catherine was virtually unprecedented in modern royal history. Catherine felt her eyes welling with emotion, but her royal training helped her maintain composure while processing this extraordinary honor. The title wasn't just recognition of her past work. It was an invitation to expand her influence and impact on causes close to her heart. Furthermore, King Charles continued, clearly having planned every word of this announcement. This new role will include oversight of a substantial royal trust fund dedicated to early childhood development programs throughout the United Kingdom and our Commonwealth nations. The financial implications of the king's announcement were staggering. Royal trust funds represented serious commitments of both money and royal prestige. Lady Margaret Worthington, who served on several charitable boards herself, immediately understood that Catherine was being given resources that could genuinely transform children's lives across multiple nations. William's expression had shifted from surprise to deep admiration for both his wife and his father. The decision showed not just recognition of Catherine's abilities, but also the king's vision for a monarchy that actively engaged with contemporary social challenges. Thompson, the head butler, had been serving the royal family long enough to recognize historic moments when they occurred. Despite his professional training to remain invisible during family interactions, he found himself deeply moved by the genuine emotion and significance of what he was witnessing. The room remained suspended in this moment of recognition and transformation. Guests who had arrived expecting routine royal socializing instead found themselves witnessing a moment that would likely be discussed and analyzed for years to come. The informality of the setting made it all the more remarkable. This wasn't a carefully orchestrated ceremony, but a spontaneous expression of royal confidence and affection. Catherine finally spoke, her voice steady despite the emotion she felt. "Your Majesty, I am deeply honored by your confidence and trust. This opportunity to serve the children of our nation and the Commonwealth represents everything I hope to accomplish when I join this family." Her response carried the perfect balance of humility and determination that had endeared her to the royal family and the public alike. The king's smile in response revealed his satisfaction with both his decision and Catherine's gracious acceptance of this new responsibility. The silence that had gripped the room began to give way to gentle murmurs of amazement and approval. Guests exchanged meaningful glances and whispered words of congratulations, but the reverent atmosphere remained. Everyone present understood they had witnessed something special, a moment when tradition bent to recognize merit and dedication. Queen Consort Camilla approached Catherine with tears of joy in her eyes, offering a warm embrace that spoke volumes about family unity and shared purpose. The gesture added a deeply personal dimension to what could have been merely ceremonial. As word of the king's announcement began to spread among the gathered guests, the energy in the room shifted from surprise to celebration. This was more than just another royal title. It was recognition of genuine service and a blueprint for the monarchy's future engagement with social issues. The ripple effects of King Charles's unprecedented announcement spread through the ballroom like water through fine fabric, touching every corner of the elegant space and every person within it. As the initial shock began to wear off, the true magnitude of what had just occurred started to sink in among the distinguished guests. Lord Davidson, a veteran of royal circles who had witnessed decades of carefully orchestrated announcements and protocol-driven ceremonies, found himself struggling to process what he had just experienced. He leaned toward his wife, Lady Elizabeth, and whispered with barely contained amazement, "In 30 years of attending these functions, I have never seen anything quite like this." Lady Elizabeth nodded in agreement, her own eyes still wide with wonder. She had known Catherine since before her marriage to William, had watched her navigate the complexities of royal life with grace and determination, but even she hadn't anticipated such dramatic recognition of the younger woman's contributions. The Earl of Wessex, who had been engaged in mundane conversation about agricultural policies just moments before, now found himself contemplating the broader implications of the king's decision. Royal patronages and new titles weren't created without extensive consultation and careful consideration of their impact on the monarchy's public image and effectiveness. Catherine stood beside King Charles, still processing the enormity of what had just happened. The title of Royal Patron of Children's Futures wasn't just an honor. It was a responsibility that would shape the remainder of her royal career and potentially influence the lives of countless children across the Commonwealth. William approached his wife and father, his expression reflecting deep pride mixed with admiration for the king's bold decision. As the future monarch himself, he understood better than most how carefully royal titles and responsibilities were typically deliberated. The spontaneous nature of this announcement made it all the more remarkable. "Father," William said quietly, his voice carrying both respect and genuine emotion, "this recognition of Catherine's work is long overdue. Her dedication to children's welfare has been extraordinary, and this new platform will allow her to expand that impact exponentially." King Charles nodded approvingly at his son's response, clearly pleased that the decision resonated with the future king. Family unity in royal matters was crucial, and William's immediate support validated the wisdom of the choice. The Queen Consort Camilla, still standing close to Catherine, spoke with warmth that reflected years of growing affection and respect. "My dear, you have earned this recognition through genuine service and heartfelt commitment. The children who will benefit from your expanded role are fortunate indeed." Thompson, the head butler, had served the royal family through numerous historic moments, but he sensed that tonight would be remembered as particularly significant. He began mentally composing the brief report he would need to provide to the senior household staff, knowing that word of this announcement would need to be carefully managed to maintain appropriate protocol. The broader implications of King Charles's decision were already becoming apparent to those familiar with royal operations. Lady Margaret Worthington, drawing on her extensive experience with charitable organizations, quickly realized that this new role would require substantial infrastructure, staff, and coordination across multiple governments and institutions. "The logistics alone will be fascinating," she murmured to the Duchess of Marlborough, who had rejoined their conversation circle. "Coordinating children's welfare initiatives across the entire Commonwealth will require unprecedented cooperation and resources." The Duchess nodded thoughtfully. "But if anyone can manage such a complex undertaking, it's Catherine. Her work with existing children's charities has been meticulous and effective. She has the temperament and skills for this expanded role." Meanwhile, other guests were beginning to understand that they had witnessed something that would likely be studied and discussed by royal historians for generations. The informal setting, the spontaneous nature of the announcement, and the creation of an entirely new royal role represented a significant evolution in how the monarchy approached recognition and responsibility. Dr. Richard Pembleton, a constitutional scholar who happened to be among the evening's guests, was already contemplating the precedents being set. The king's decision to create a new patronage specifically tailored to one individual's strengths and interests suggested a more flexible and responsive approach to royal duties than had traditionally been seen. Catherine, having recovered from her initial surprise, began to engage more actively with the implications of her new role. Her natural inclination toward careful planning and thorough preparation was already asserting itself as she considered the scope and possibilities of this expanded platform. "Your Majesty," she addressed King Charles with respectful formality, "I would be honored to begin developing a comprehensive strategy for this new role. The opportunity to coordinate children's welfare initiatives across the Commonwealth is both exciting and daunting." The king's approval was evident in his expression as he responded, "I have complete confidence in your ability to shape this role into something truly meaningful. Your instincts for identifying genuine need and developing effective responses have been consistently impressive." As the evening progressed, conversations throughout the ballroom inevitably turned to speculation about how Catherine's new role might develop. The financial resources that King Charles had promised to allocate would enable initiatives on a scale previously impossible for individual royal patronages. Lord Pemberton, who had extensive experience in international development, approached Catherine with genuine enthusiasm. "Your Highness, if I may say so, this new role arrives at a perfect moment. There's growing recognition worldwide of the critical importance of early childhood development for long-term societal health." Catherine engaged eagerly with this perspective, her passion for the subject evident in her immediate response. "Absolutely, Lord Pemberton. The research showing the impact of early intervention on educational outcomes, mental health, and future economic productivity is compelling. This role could help translate that research into practical programs." The conversation drew in several other guests who had expertise in related fields. Dr. Sarah Worthington, a child psychologist, offered insights into the growing understanding of childhood trauma and resilience. Professor James Hartwell, an education policy expert, discussed innovative early learning programs showing promise in various Commonwealth nations. What had begun as a formal dinner party was transforming into an impromptu think tank session, with Catherine at the center of passionate discussions about childhood development, educational equity, and social intervention strategies. Her new title was already serving its intended purpose of creating a platform for serious engagement with critical social issues. King Charles observed these developing conversations with evident satisfaction. His decision to create this new role hadn't been made lightly, but seeing Catherine naturally slip into the intellectual and practical discussions it would require confirmed his judgment. William joined the group surrounding his wife, contributing his own perspectives on environmental factors affecting child development and the intersection between conservation and public health initiatives. The collaborative dynamic between the royal couple was evident as they built on each other's ideas and insights. The Queen Consort Camilla, watching the animated discussions developing around Catherine's new role, felt deep satisfaction in the family unity and purposeful energy the evening had generated. Royal functions were often pleasant, but routine. Tonight had become something genuinely meaningful and forward-looking. As the formal dinner hour approached, guests began moving toward the designated dining area, but conversations continued to center on the implications and possibilities of Catherine's new patronage. The energy in the room had shifted from polite social interaction to engaged intellectual exchange. Thompson coordinated the transition to dinner service with his characteristic efficiency, but even he noticed how the evening's unexpected announcement had energized the entire gathering. Guests who might normally have engaged in predictable social pleasantries were instead discussing policy implications and program development strategies. The seating arrangements, carefully planned weeks in advance, suddenly seemed prophetic as Catherine found herself positioned where she could continue conversations with the education experts, child welfare advocates, and policy scholars who had gravitated toward her throughout the evening. King Charles, observing the natural evolution of the evening's discussions, felt confirmed in his decision to make the announcement in this informal setting rather than through official channels. The immediate engagement and enthusiasm of qualified experts present at the gathering suggested that Catherine's new role would benefit from this kind of spontaneous intellectual collaboration. As the first course was served, conversations at multiple tables continued to explore various aspects of childhood development policy, international cooperation frameworks, and innovative program design. What had begun as a single announcement had catalyzed a broader discussion about the monarchy's role in addressing contemporary social challenges. The evening was proving that sometimes the most significant developments arise not from formal ceremonies or official pronouncements, but from genuine recognition of merit and the natural evolution of meaningful conversation among people committed to positive change. The dinner that followed King Charles's remarkable announcement transformed into something unprecedented in royal entertaining history. What should have been elegant conversation, punctuated by ceremonial toasts, became an intensive working session disguised as formal dining, with Catherine at the center of discussions that would shape the future of childhood welfare across the Commonwealth. As guests settled into their assigned seats, the carefully planned seating arrangement seemed almost prophetic. Catherine found herself surrounded by individuals whose expertise would prove invaluable in developing her new role. Dr. Sarah Worthington, the child psychologist, sat to her right, while Professor James Hartwell, the education policy expert, was positioned directly across from her. The first course, a delicate consommé with seasonal vegetables, provided the perfect backdrop for continued conversation. Catherine, still processing the magnitude of her new responsibilities, found herself naturally drawn into discussions about implementation strategies and practical considerations. The challenge, Dr. Worthington observed, carefully balancing her spoon as she spoke, will be creating programs that are culturally sensitive while maintaining consistent quality standards across such diverse Commonwealth nations. Catherine nodded thoughtfully, her own meal temporarily forgotten as she engaged with the complexity of the issue. That's precisely why I believe we need to focus on supporting local initiatives rather than imposing standardized approaches. Each community understands its children's needs better than any centralized authority could. Professor Hartwell leaned forward with interest. That philosophy aligns perfectly with the most successful international development models. The key is providing resources and expertise while allowing local adaptation and ownership. King Charles, seated at the head of the table, observed these developing conversations with deep satisfaction. His decision to create this new role for Catherine was already proving its worth, as she naturally facilitated meaningful dialogue between experts who might never have otherwise collaborated. William, positioned where he could participate in multiple conversation clusters, found himself impressed by his wife's intuitive grasp of policy implementation challenges. Her questions revealed both intellectual curiosity and practical wisdom that would serve her well in this expanded role. Lord Davidson, who had initially been surprised by the evening's unexpected turn, was now fully engaged in discussing funding mechanisms and governmental cooperation frameworks. His decades of experience in public service provided valuable perspective on navigating bureaucratic challenges across multiple national systems. The beauty of royal patronage, he explained to the group, is its ability to transcend normal political boundaries. Catherine's new role could facilitate cooperation between Commonwealth governments that might otherwise struggle with jurisdictional complexities. Lady Elizabeth added her own insights drawn from years of charitable board service. The key will be establishing clear metrics for success while maintaining flexibility in methods. Donors and governments alike want to see measurable impact, but rigid requirements often stifle innovation. As the second course arrived, featuring locally sourced salmon with traditional accompaniments, conversations had evolved into serious strategic planning sessions. Catherine found herself taking mental notes on dozens of suggestions and insights that would inform her approach to this new responsibility. The Queen Consort Camilla, observing the passionate engagement surrounding Catherine, felt deep pride in the family's commitment to meaningful service. Royal titles could easily become ceremonial obligations, but The energy and expertise being brought to bear on Catherine's new role suggested something far more substantial. Thompson, coordinating the service with his usual precision, couldn't help but notice how the evening's unexpected announcement had transformed the entire character of the gathering. Rather than the polite but predictable conversations typical of royal dinners, genuine collaboration and innovation were occurring at every table. Dr. Pemberton, the constitutional scholar, had been quietly observing the evening's developments with academic fascination. The creation of Catherine's new role represented more than just individual recognition. It suggested an evolution in how the monarchy might engage with contemporary social challenges. This approach, he murmured to his dinner companion, represents a significant departure from traditional royal patronage models. Rather than simply lending prestige to existing organizations, Catherine is being empowered to create new frameworks and initiatives. The implications were indeed revolutionary within royal circles. Traditional patronages involved ceremonial support and occasional visits to established institutions. Catherine's new role suggested active leadership in developing solutions to complex social challenges. As the main course was served, featuring beef from the royal estates prepared with modern techniques honoring traditional flavors, King Charles rose to offer a formal toast. The room fell silent as guests recognized the significance of his words. Tonight, the king began, his voice carrying both the authority of his position and the warmth of family pride. We celebrate not just individual achievement, but our collective commitment to the welfare of our youngest citizens. He paused, allowing his words to resonate throughout the dining room. Every guest understood they were witnessing history in the making, a moment when royal tradition evolved to meet contemporary needs. Catherine's new role as royal patron of children's futures represents our belief that the monarchy must be more than ceremonial. It must be actively engaged in improving lives and building stronger communities. The toast that followed was heartfelt and unanimous, with guests raising their glasses in genuine appreciation for both Catherine's past service and the expanded opportunities her new position would provide. As the evening continued with dessert and coffee, smaller groups formed around specific aspects of childhood welfare policy. Catherine moved between these discussions, absorbing insights and building relationships that would prove crucial in the months and years ahead. Lady Margaret Worthington, drawing on her extensive charitable experience, offered to help establish the administrative infrastructure that would be needed. A role of this scope will require sophisticated coordination mechanisms, she observed. I'd be happy to help identify potential staff and systems. Professor Hartwell suggested establishing academic partnerships to ensure that programs developed under Catherine's patronage would be informed by the latest research. The universities across the Commonwealth represent tremendous untapped resources for this kind of initiative, he noted. Dr. Worthington proposed creating evaluation frameworks that could track long-term outcomes while respecting the privacy and dignity of participating families. We need to prove impact without turning children into data points, she emphasized. As the evening drew toward its close, Catherine found herself surrounded by offers of assistance, expertise, and collaboration. What had begun as a surprising announcement had evolved into a comprehensive support network for her new responsibilities. William, observing his wife's natural leadership in these discussions, felt deep pride mixed with excitement about the possibilities ahead. The royal couple had always worked well together, and this new role would provide opportunities for expanded collaboration on issues they both cared deeply about. King Charles, reflecting on the evening's evolution, felt confirmed in his decision to make the announcement in this informal setting. The immediate engagement and enthusiasm of the gathered experts suggested that Catherine's new role had struck exactly the right note at precisely the right moment. As guests began to take their leave, many approached Catherine with specific offers of assistance or collaboration. Business cards were exchanged, follow-up meetings were scheduled, and the foundation for a comprehensive network of support was established. The silence that had initially swept the room when King Charles made his announcement had given way to animated conversation, genuine excitement, and concrete planning for meaningful action. What began as surprise had evolved into determination, and what started as individual recognition had become collective commitment to positive change. Thompson, observing the departure of energized guests still deep in conversation about childhood welfare policies and implementation strategies, recognized that he had witnessed something truly special. Royal dinners often generated pleasant memories and reinforced social connections, but this evening had generated actual momentum for addressing serious social challenges. As Catherine and William prepared to leave, the king took a moment for private conversation with his son and daughter-in-law. The pride in his expression reflected not just paternal affection, but genuine confidence in the choice he had made. The response tonight exceeded even my optimistic expectations, he told them both. Catherine, you now have both the platform and the network to accomplish extraordinary things for children throughout our realm. Catherine's response reflected both humility and determination. The opportunity is overwhelming in the best possible way, Your Majesty. Tonight has shown me both the scale of need and the depth of expertise available to address it. The evening that had begun with anticipation and surprise concluded with hope and concrete plans for positive change, proving that sometimes the most significant developments arise from genuine recognition of merit and natural collaboration among people committed to meaningful service.